Welcome to Resilience Redefined. I'm your host, Michael Ostrolenk. This show is about building better humans, institutions, and systems. On the show, I'll be interviewing many different experts from across many different fields, including human optimization, health and fitness, team building, mind-body medicine. In the institutional space, we're looking at different institutions and how we can create new ones, new models and maps, including in medicine, in education, in intelligence community, in law enforcement, in the military, especially in the special operations community. Thanks for being here and enjoy the show. Speaker and host of Secrets of Happily Ever After podcast. Monica is a best-selling author of Bad Marriage Advice, where she challenges many of the relationship myths we've all heard, from happy wife to happy life, to never go to bed angry, and offers practical tools for creating deeper connection, better communication, and lasting intimacy. Her mission is to help couples move beyond resentment and disconnection and build relationships that are genuinely fulfilling, resilient, and alive. Today, we'll explore some of the biggest myths about love and marriage, what actually creates lasting connections, and how couples can thrive in the real world. Please join me in welcoming Monica Tanner.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, very much looking forward to this conversation. It's funny, I've been doing this since 2008, and I've rarely had relationship experts on.
Wow.
I'm looking forward to the back and forth with you. Looking forward to this. This is going to be a lot of fun. Obviously, you have a book, you have a podcast, but before we kind of get into your theories of practice and how you work with couples and all that kind of good stuff, why couples? Why did you choose to work with couples and write a book and create a whole podcast around that?
Yeah, I think I've always been obsessed with relationships. When I was 12 years old, my parents divorced. And I just remember it kind of shattering something inside of me like, wait a second, that's not supposed to happen. And so I started at a very young age studying relationships because I knew that they mattered. And the older I got, the more I realized how interlinked our romantic relationships are to our happiness and our efficacy. And so I studied in college. I got married right out of college. We started a family together. Once my youngest child went to kindergarten, I went back to school to get my LMFT. And I've always really been enamored with what makes marriages strong and healthy and thriving, and not just, how can we tolerate each other for a very long period of time, which I feel like a lot of people do. It's how do we co-create something really special that we're proud to kind of hand down and model for our posterity. So, yeah, that's a little bit about how I got into this work.
That's
No, I actually dropped out of my graduate program about a year in, and my parents are both therapists, and when they divorced, they each married therapists. So I was raised by 4 therapists. So I got into that program, and I wasn't really one of our first assignments was to, interview other LMFTs and kind of learn about what they did, and I really was disappointed with their success rate was very, very low. They actually had a lot of couples divorced, and I attributed some of that to couples just being in total crisis by the time they get to counseling. But I also recognized that there was something about kind of some of the theories and the things that the sort of rules that therapists operate under that I thought was kind of antithetical to creating success there or having a better result. Yeah, I definitely don't want to put down traditional therapy, but I ended up I ended up going the coaching route. And so initially, as I was working with couples, this is how I kind of thought about it. I was like, I would rather do oil changes than work with blown engines. In my mind, I kind of thought couples in crisis who are going to therapy are kind of blown engines. And what I wanted to do was create a content around how do we protect the marriage? How do we do things to prevent a total blown engine, right? And so that's how I started. And I did take couples, and what I quickly learned was that that was a little bit delusional of me. When couples had big problems, I was like completely out of my element. And so I did go back and study relational life therapy. I actually learned EFT. I learned all kinds of attachment theory. So I was kind of creating my own curriculum. But when I found relational life therapy, which actually breaks a lot of rules of traditional therapy, for example, we do take sides. We do judiciously disclose. There's just a few things that I kind of felt like helped the work. And now I've been practicing as an RLT practitioner for the last 2 to 3 years. It's really changed the way I work with couples, and I've seen a lot of success. In fact, I just got home from a 3-day intensive with a couple where they were legit on the verge of divorce. I mean, he had very much come to terms with the fact that the marriage was over. She still wanted to fight for it. And in 3 days, we completely turned things around. And it was so beautiful, so transformational. And I've seen a lot of that working in the RLT format. So that's, yeah, a little bit
Okay,
about
I want to
me.
dive into taking sides, judiciously sharing a little bit about yourself. I'm licensed as a therapist, but I've not practiced in 25 years. Practicing as a coach since
Yes.
2000.
And my mother, who's been practicing for 40 years as a therapist, is now considers herself more as a coach as well. Like the coaching is just, it's a little bit different.
Yeah. And I love alternative models as you're suggesting that challenge the conventional paradigm of how we're supposed to do things in a particular profession. So, is- if you don't mind sharing a little bit about like taking sides and
Ah,
judiciously sharing about yourself that's benefits the couple in some way, and any other kind of challenges to the conventional paradigm of marriage and family therapy, that'd be great.
yeah. Well, let me start with judicious self-disclosure because in traditional therapy, you're kind of the expert and the couple is coming to you for guidance or help. For me, I position myself a little bit more as a fellow traveler. It's a little more RLT concept, meaning that, you know, I'm no farther along than anyone else. I've studied this stuff and I am obsessed with this stuff and I have some experience, but, you know, when I'm not using these skills and, kind of, doing my own recovery work, especially in my own marriage is, kind of the lab of where I learn a lot of things. My relationship is as ugly as yours, right? So it's not that I know so much better. Um, I'm more of a guide than a expert. So that would begin, and I use a lot of examples from my own life and my own marriage to kind of illustrate this is how I've learned this and this is how this applies here and those types of things. I use a lot of object lessons. I'll show you. Especially when I work in person with couples, like I give them these Chinese handcuffs, which is a great object lesson for what couples tend to do is they pull tighter and tighter and get stucker and stucker into their dynamics. So, I do a lot of things like that with people. So that's a little bit about judicious self-disclosure. I do share about a lot about my life on the internet and on podcasts and things like that. So that's that. Taking sides is another big RLT move that is not in the traditional kind of paradigm, yes.
Yeah, yeah.
So a lot of times are you familiar with the terms latent and blatant?
No.
So a lot of times you'll have a couple where there's an uneven power dynamic. One partner is more out of relational health, typically more grandiose or one up, and there is a more latent partner who, might be for whatever reason not speaking up, not challenging the dynamic. And so I will often throw my weight behind the less voice,
Yeah.
the more voiceless partner, the one who doesn't traditionally speak up, but probably has more. What's the word? Has more, complaints maybe about the relationship. So, that's a big one. Leverage is a big one. I mean, I think that's pretty
Let me ask you about that.
standard.
Do you
Yeah.
in advance let them know, like, as part of my paradigm that I'm gonna possibly take sides? Is that explicit, or do you share it in the moment? Like, how? Is
It
that
just
true?
depends. It just depends on the couple. I mean, one of the things we say in RLT is we want the mighty to the weak to stand up and the mighty to melt. And so I do make that explicit that if I, sense that there's um, an imbalance in the relationship, that I will throw my weight behind the weaker partner.
Nice. Not to get sexist, but is it usually like a man versus I don't know if you work with just heterosexual couples, but
Yeah.
assuming from a heterosexual couple, is the dynamic usually the woman is the more quiet one and the man is robust and loud and no, I'm saying obnoxious, but like,
More controlling, more demanding.
was it mixture of
I would say there's a mixture of both. I've actually worked with a lot of grandiose women. I would say my clients generally are kind of more successful men, but I do have a lot of grandiose women who, yeah, they kind of present as more entitled and, more explosive, reactive. So I would say a mixture of both, but I think I probably do attract some of those women who are used to getting their way, and when they don't, it causes a lot of problems in the relationship.
do you see a difference in like generations, like 20-year olds different than 30, then 40 and 50 and 60? Like you
Yes, I would say in younger couples, a lot of times, yeah, I would say a good chunk of my couples are kind of a more grandiose, demanding woman and a more appeasing kind of, I don't want to make her mad kind of man.
yeah.
I would say, so I wrote a book. It's called Bad Marriage Advice. And one of the worst pieces of advice I hear often is happy wife, happy life. And so whether that's, kind of an old childhood wound or the marital wound, but a lot of times I will see women who are more entitled, they have a voice and they use it, and the man is more kind of shut down. We don't want to rile her up, bad things happen. So I have had to throw my weight behind the man often, but I do have the opposite power dynamic as well.
I love the myth, like, breaking apart myths. Say more about the happy wife, happy life. Why that's a myth. That's not a good one and problematic from what you've seen in your work.
Yeah, I mean, it absolutely makes me crazy because the sentiment behind it is great, especially if you're the wife. You're like, "Oh,
Yeah.
yes, revolve around me. That sounds great." Except for it causes a lot of resentment and scorekeeping and eventual withdrawal. So, if a husband, because it's happy wife, happy life,
Yeah.
you can't create an equal and a balanced relationship when the power dynamic is off like that. But it is a lot of responsibility for the wife to, kind of control the emotional thermostat of the relationship, and that's a lot of pressure to be happy all the time. As humans, we know that we're only happy about half of the time, and so if that is somehow generalized as the man's not doing his job or not doing it well, it creates a lot of problems, as well as eventually the man's gonna go, If I'm not getting anything, my whole life revolves around keeping her happy. What is there for me in this relationship?" And then you have a big problem there as well. So, yeah, definitely, I like happy spouse, happy house better than happy wife, happy life. That creates a little more balance in the relationship. However, the truth is happiness is an inside job. So we shouldn't be focused on making our partner happy anyways, which probably flies in the face of some traditional marriage therapy principles. But I don't actually believe that it is my job to make my husband happy at all, nor his job to make me happy. I like to I focus more on differentiation, and when I'm happy and fulfilled and healed, then I bring my best to the relationship, and so does my partner.
You write and talk about another myth that your partner can't play all the roles in one's life. That's an impossibility, and then
Mhm.
sets up a standard that's impossible to meet and can cause a lot of resentment. Can you speak to that one too?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that I explicitly talk about that one in the book, but I mean, I can tell you that your partner can't be everything to you. A- And I also think that modern marriage puts a lot more expectations than marriage ever has in the past. I feel like a lot of the complaints that we have today, you know, just a generation back, people would say, "Are you crazy? What do you want from this institution?" Right? Like if most people a generation back would be like, you're expecting too much, like lower your expectations. When I think that now what we want from modern marriage is we want to have a lifelong lover. We want to be married to our best friend. We want somebody to challenge us. We want somebody to, bring out the best in us. We want somebody to heal all our wounds. And that's just not possible without a, a, a greater skill in communication and, making requests and those types of things. And also, I think we look to one person to provide what historically a village provided for us. So it is a good awareness that your spouse can't be everything to you. And just because they don't love all the things that you love and want to do all the things that you want to do, that doesn't necessarily mean you're incompatible. It might just mean you're putting a little bit too much responsibility on a human that's different than you.
Speaking generationally, it's interesting because I could imagine like we used to have more intact nuclear families. But the nuclear family was the nucleus of a broader family. So you had aunts and uncles and cousins, and they're usually like, especially at
In close proximity.
the time,
Yeah.
so people can play multiple different roles. But now it's like if you're maybe just the husband and wife, maybe a couple of kids, there's not the extended family. So you don't even have the pressure valves of other people being able to step in and do things on your behalf, or you can do that for them too. So I have to imagine that adds extra pressure on a
Yeah, and I think the culture as well is a little anti-marriage, like a little, individually empowered, happy, like everybody's happy to jump on the bandwagon that you married, a jerk. So I think it is important to surround ourselves with people who champion the marriage, and I think we can train the people around us to champion the marriage. So, I have friends all the time that I'm like, "Hey, listen, I'm gonna vent for a minute, but I don't want you to jump on my side. What I want you to do is see what I'm not seeing from the perspective of someone who would be living with me, right?" Or like, and so I think it's really easy. I was working with a couple last week, and I think I mentioned them already, and I was like, "You could probably sell to your friends that she's a jerk and he's a jerk, right? I'm sure you could find lots of people to agree with you, and at the end of the day, she's your jerk and he's your jerk, right? And so, how can we use the feedback we're getting from each other to actually grow ourselves up and handle more honesty, rather than just get validation for the idea that they're not giving me what I want?"
what are some of the top issues you see when people come to you originally? They wanna help you're helping working them through. It's like, "Oh, these are the 4 categories, and it mostly fits in one of these 4 things," or
Yeah. I mean, mostly I think communication, unproductive communication, feeling disconnected or incompatible, and then a lot of issues around sex. So like the standard answer of what can I do for you? It's going to be something in the communication realm or something in the sexual realm is usually the top answers that I get.
I listened to, one of your talks, I think it was, and you were talking about when you first got into this space, the challenge pushback you got from your community when you started engaging in conversations around sex. Yeah, so I'm like, how's that been for you to kinda be the relationship expert, including sexuality, which is a huge part of human life, in your own community?
Yeah. It's interesting because I think people are, meaning my friends, like people in close contact with me, I think are starting to understand what I do and see the value in it. But uh, in my, I would say like a strong Christian community, we've been conditioned for many, many, many years not to talk about sex, and that's exactly the problem. Is that we don't talk about sex enough, and I think that we have a lot of very flawed, messages that we give around sex and sexuality and people's bodies and those types of things, and that creates a lot of trouble, in a marriage, especially when you're taught, "No, no, no, this is dangerous, this is bad, stay away from this." And it's such an integral part of who we are, our own sexuality. And then you're married, and then all of a sudden it's go, go, go. Like, this is really, really important. And you've got to do this. There's a chapter in my book that says a good wife keeps her husband satisfied. I think that's a big message that we get, especially in my community specifically, but in the broader, just kind of Christian, especially. And I think that can be very problematic and antithetical to creating a really good, healthy, thriving sex life.
That's a chapter.
Yeah. I mean, I think that Emily Nagoski frames it up the best in her book, Come As You Are. She talks about our sexuality like a garden. And when we're growing up, we get all of these messages about sexuality from Hollywood and the porn industry and our parents and our religious leaders. And they're all seeds that are planted in our garden without really our consent. It's just, here's what we pick up. Here's what our role models or caretakers are planting in our garden, and a lot of those grow into noxious weeds. And so I think it becomes our responsibility as adults to now it's our turn to tend the garden. And for a lot of us, it's not about just pulling out the little weeds, it's about completely, wiping out what there, rototilling the garden, preparing the soil, and then planting more healthy and productive messages, things that will be more of a blessing to our relationship, our marriage. And that takes time. It takes a lot of time to be able to identify what's growing in our gardens and then choose into a healthier messaging.
You find the availability, exponential availability of porn, for instance, negatively affecting, I don't know if it's just young men, but the men inside the either newly married or even married for a long time, or I don't know if you work with people who are dating, but like, what are you seeing with generations who are brought up with the full exposure of the.
Yeah, I mean, I think porn is so widely available that if I had a dollar for every male that told me they were exposed to porn when they were 12 years old, I would be very wealthy. I mean, I don't think there is a male human or a female human for that matter that hasn't been exposed to pornography by the time they're 12. It's just so readily available. And I think it's less about the porn per se and more about the relationship that we are able to develop between us and porn, us and us and whoever we're in relationship with. So I think all of those factors are tricky and need to be worked with and can be worked with. But again, there are a lot of tricky programs out there, ideas out there, messages about porn, and um, anyone who has viewed porn in any way, shape, or form, and how horrible that is when sometimes you've got to assess what is the reason for the porn, how is the porn being used, and what are the couple in particular's values around that. So there's a lot of factors. It's not black and white. It's a lot more nuanced, I think, than a lot of people give it.
What are you seeing in terms of courting changes? I know it's an old term. Half the listening audience probably have no idea what courting means, but like, are you seeing dating dynamics shifting a good bit since you've been starting to do this work?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, my husband and I, when we started dating 25 years ago, we had cell phones, but we had, it was free after we dated long distance for a long time. It was free after 9 o'clock. So we talked on the phone a lot late at night. That's how we got to know each other. But I think now you've got dating apps that are so prevalent. You've texting, which takes a lot of context and tone out of again, I think the availability of not just porn, but lots and lots of different I actually was working with a beautiful woman, single woman the other day, and she was telling me about she had started dating this guy and she thought everything was going great, and then he told her that he had a diaper fetish or something, and I just went, that one was I had never heard that before. So
Me too.
so yeah, there's just the availability of so many different um avenues to express ourselves, and the ability to be able to really accept another person and their differences is, I think there's a lot of challenges there. And I think there's a lot of um, great things. I mean, we never have to feel disconnected. I mean, we're connected at all times. So it just depends on how we use that technology, I guess.
You mentioned the Christian community. What role does spirituality in general?
Yeah, I mean, for me, I am a Christian. I live my life with very Christian values. This recently came up with a couple I was working with. Were concerned that our values didn't match up, and I was very explicit about the fact that my job is to help the couple get to their goals according to their values. So if I'm doing my job well, they wouldn't even, I mean, again, because I disclose so much about myself on the internet and everywhere else, it's pretty easy to see what my values are, but I'm not putting my values on a couple that I work with. I absolutely am helping a couple understand their values and what their goals are and marrying back to them what they show me. So, so yeah,
Does that mean like if you have a couple who are on a spiritual path, spirituality could be a part of your conversation because it's important to them, and you might help them kind of unpack what practices they might be doing that support their marriage and things like that?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I think it's very important. I am merely a mirror. I help couples see, what they can't see. I often say you can't see the label from the inside of the bottle, and my job is not to interpret. My job is not to put my values onto them. It's to mirror back to them. If this is what your values are, here's what you may be doing to support or not support what you say you're valuing, right? So that's just my job to kind of point out to them what they're doing is separate and apart from what I'm doing. But I have in the past gotten, referred a couple out uh, um, when their values when it's not my area of expertise for sure.
What are some of the myths that you break apart that you'd like our listening and viewing audience to know about? What are some of the other myths?
You froze for me for I missed, like, the last few things you said.
I'm just saying, what are some of the other myths that you break apart in your work?
I mean, there's so much. I just did a podcast interview with a woman who went through all 15 of them, and we went over all of them, but I think some of the bigger ones are that are most destructive are, if they loved me, they would just know. I think that's a big one that we operate on. It causes a lot of disappointment and resentment, and, I see couples who've been married for decades who feel like if their partner loved them enough or knew them or listened to them, that they would just know what they need. And I think that's a huge, huge disservice to the couple and the relationship. I always say husbands don't take hints and neither do wives. We don't respond to testing, we respond to teaching. And so if you want to have a fantastic marriage with a partner, you have to roll up your sleeves and teach them how to treat you with love. So that's one of the things I work a lot with couples around.
That's awesome. Yeah, the moderating thing is really interesting. Are people receptive to learning how well, actually, let me step back and ask a different question. Do you find that once you start questioning people's ability to mind read, because unless you're psychic, they probably don't have the ability, that they even know what they want, need, and desire and are able to articulate it to a partner?
Well, I think that is their responsibility. I mean, I have a lot of ways of helping them. So, for example, we are as humans very good at complaining about things. Our brain loves to find complaints. And so that's going to be your first tip off that you're not asking for what you want, need, or desire. If you're complaining about something And the easiest way to figure out what it is that you want is to start with, what do I not want? What am I complaining about my partner? And that's a good indication that there's a request there. And I teach people how to skillfully frame their request to their partner in a way that their partner can hear and help with. The other thing is, I frame it up a little bit differently in that, you know, y I think we sometimes live by the delusion of this, it would be better if my partner could just read my mind. We've been married for so long. I wish they just knew by now what my lunch order is, or that I like my, you know, bedding certain way. But I like to challenge that and think, have you ever changed your mind? Like, if you want to keep the passion alive in your marriage, then we're always growing and we're always evolving. And so instead of just defaulting to my partner should know, or I've known my partner forever, this is just how they are, if we give that space for each other to learn and grow and evolve. I mean, I say all the time, my husband leaves for work in the morning and I work from home. By the time he gets home, I've changed, he's changed. So I'm not going to assume that he's the same person he left as at 7 o'clock this morning. I love getting to know my partner at the end of every single day because he always comes home a different version of himself. And so I say, if you default to curiosity, you'll never run out of things to talk about.
That, and I have to imagine the curiosity is not just about your partner, like not turning them into a rock. That's just who they are, but also curiosity about yourself. So you don't turn yourself into a rock too, right?
Exactly, exactly. And that's how we keep growing and evolving, and that's how we stay passionate about each other. My husband and I are very, very different humans. We were raised in different, and this maybe goes to the next um, myth that I is super destructive of this. If we don't agree, we're incompatible, and I may if I'm if we fight, I married the wrong person, or if we disagree. I love conflict. I love having differing positions from my husband. We grew up in different parts of the country with different religious backgrounds, with different family constellations. So literally, if you were to ask me and my husband a question about almost any topic, you're going to get a different answer from both of us. And I often say it is our differences that create the passion in our marriage, and it is navigating those differences that creates the intimacy. I love being married to somebody who thinks so differently than I do. I honor, like, cherish and love, respect his differences, the way his brain works differently than mine, the way he sees things differently than I. It's a big strength to us. And I think when you see it that way, it's very different than, it's so annoying if they would just do it my way, it would
Yeah,
be
yeah,
better.
yeah. Tit for tat. My way's the right way. That you're wrong. Yeah, I love that. So I think I hear you saying is that the recognition of the differences and acceptance and celebration of the differences is actually an intimacy enhancer, including I would imagine polarities in terms of sexual energy too.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Can you unpack that a little bit more? Why you see that as an intimacy enhancer, especially sexually?
Well, I mean, It sexuality in and of itself, I don't know if you've ever read, Mating in Captivity by Esther Perel, but she's very good at pointing out how love requires safety and stress, right? A feeling of familiarity and adventure. Like, in and of itself, creating that sexual energy requires, kind of a polarity. It a newness and a familiarity, right? Adventure and safety, so that in and of itself. But one thing I like to point out is different perspectives are so important and fun and passionate, because there's an elephant behind me. It's a little bit blurry in this picture, but I use an elephant analogy so much when I'm talking to partners, because if you've ever met somebody who is so solid in their position that they can't see anybody else's point of view, that type of person is stuck looking at the butt of an elephant. But if you'll zoom out a little bit and recognize that your partner's position could have merit, and because invariably, because we're all so different, they're looking at a they're looking at that elephant from a different perspective. And so if you'll open your heart and hear them, then you could get a really cool view of this magnificent animal. But if you shut them down every time and you're not willing to see their point of view, then you just are stuck looking at the butt of an elephant. And how unfortunate.
I'm telling that, I love that. That's a great teaching tool. That's really, really cool.
Yeah, not only for our romantic relationships, but in any relationship in our society. If we could all zoom out a little bit and see each other's perspective, we'll get more of a view of what's possible, of what we're looking at. But some of us have a really hard time seeing outside of our direct line of vision.
Yeah, not to get religious, but it's like almost like a God complex. I'm omniscient. I see everything and I know exactly how things should be and it should be my particular way. As opposed to like one of the things I like to share is like everyone has a limited but partial truth.
Exactly. Oh, I call that a subjective reality. There is no objective reality in relationships, right? There's my truth and your truth. And interestingly enough, this is one of the things my husband and I love to discuss because he thinks there is absolute truth and he calls me a relativist and he gets really upset when I start talking about how there's no such thing as objective reality in relationships. There's my reality and your reality, and those realities are always going to be different. They're never going to match up. And so, but he's like, if there's absolute truth, then it would match up, right? So we talk about this all the time, and it's proof that you can hold very differing positions with respect and love
Mhm.
and allow for that in the relationship. And the way it's, those stances play out, like here's a great example of how that is a strength for us is when you talk about technology and our children. We have two adult grown children and two teenagers still at home, so four kids altogether. And for the entirety of the time we've been raising our kids, technology and social media have been just huge um, areas for my husband and I to navigate. To my husband, he thinks no social media. He'd rather no technology, no social media. Like, let's keep this away from our kids as long as possible. Whereas I have a much different perspective. I'm like, while they're under my roof, I want to expose them to this. So, again, complete differing perspectives. And we have to parent together. We have all these children who have all these different needs, and he's not around all the time, and I'm not around all the time. So, how are we going to come to something together where I don't agree with his position and he doesn't agree with my position, but we have a very healthy understanding of each other's position? And so we can parent together very well. There are definite benefits to the way he sees it and benefits to the way I see it. There's also limitations to the way I see it and the way he sees it. And so we're constantly navigating complete differences of opinion on an issue that has a lot of impact on our children. And we do it. So, that's just exactly.
Together.
Repair is really important, right? When we start talking about these charged, heated issues, I mean, it's not lovey dovey holding hands talking about it all the time. Sometimes there's huge ruptures and we have the skills for repair.
I think that's one of the myths you also break too, that everything should be, once you're married, everything should be really easy. Like, not only you have two human beings, and to your point, two human beings with completely different pasts, different geographical locations, religious upbringings, ethnicity, all the different forces, time in utero, all the stuff like that helps generate and create who we ultimately are to some degree or another.
Birth order. I mean, there's so many things, right?
All the stuff. Yeah, exactly. I mean, even with epigenetics, intergenerational transmission of trauma or certain behaviors that you can track down the family lineage,
Personalities. I mean,
all the stuff. Yeah.
we're all so different. And so let's, hold those difference with in high regard versus resenting them, right? So how do we do that?
And actually, we could it's almost surprising we get along as well as we do. Although we can be critical, like we actually don't get along as well as we could. But the fact we come from different worlds almost, like the fact we get along and people stay together as long as they do, it's pretty amazing testament to humans' capacities to adjust and learn how to, be with each other. And
Agreed, and I do think there's a lot of truth to opposites attract, right? Like, I see all these memes all the time is you have somebody really organized and somebody very disorganized, and they marry each other, or you have a night owl and a morning bird, they marry each other, right? You have
yeah.
all of these an introvert and an extrovert, and they marry each other, right? And so, yeah, navigating these differences, it can bring a lot of conflict, and it also can bring a lot of respect and mutual understanding, and so, yeah, it's a skill set.
What's one question I've not asked you yet that you'd love to answer?
That's a great question. Um, one question that you haven't asked me, I don't know.
Oh,
What do I like to do in my spare time? Running, reading, talking with friends.
nice, nice. Are you like a runner as in
I have run 5 full marathons. Right now, I have really bad knees, so I'm getting older, getting up there, but my daughter, who is, currently living in California, she says when she gets home, she wants to train for a marathon, that's what she wants to do with me, so we're probably gonna give it a whirl again.
get those knees fixed?
Yeah, get those knees fixed, a lot of ibuprofen. Yeah, we'll manage.
And you said you're a reader. Are you like nonfiction, fiction? You have a mixture?
No, I love reading anything regarding relationships. I don't read anything just for pleasure. I read to, enrich.
Okay, that's awesome. Do you have any books you're reading now that you like to share? Or something?
Oh, so many. I'm reading Passionate Marriage by David Schnarch.
Okay.
That's a big, thick one. I'm reading, oh, where is it? Oh, I think it's right there. A Better Share by Morgan Cutlip. I've been reading that. Um, yeah, those are kind of what sits on my nightstand right now.
Nice.
But there's usually a big fat pile. I like books by Pia Mellody, anything by Terry Real.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
I love Emily Nagoski, Esther Perel. My new favorite is one by Dr. Jennifer Finlayson Fife. She wrote a great book recently. So, of
And of course, your book.
course, my book.
Your book. That's the full title of your book.
Bad Marriage Advice: Myths That Will Make You Miserable and What to Do Instead.
I love that. Cool. So I know you have a few different websites. You have the book obviously out. You have a podcast. Where can people find out more? Your speaking, your podcast, your work with couples, all the kind of good stuff.
Yeah, thank you so much for asking. My website is my name, monicatanner.com. There you can find out more about my free resources, which include my social media as well as my podcast called Secrets of Happily Ever After. And then you can also find out how to contact me to work with me in any of the ways. So,
That's awesome. Well, let me encourage folks to read your book, listen to your podcast, and reach out to you for some couples relationship work. That's awesome. Thank you for your time and your work. It's so needed. There's so many social forces at play, which you touched upon some of them that push us in the opposite direction. So I'm glad to know that people like you out there doing the good work, keeping people together, and not only keeping together for like survival purposes, but to thrive.
mhm.
Good on you. Good.
Yeah, thank you so much. This has been delightful to spend time with you. Your work is so important as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Monica. Take care.